All right, so consider this a bit of a card show if just there's anyone who's interested in taking a look at the 68 Hockey Bones player cards and seeing who will be available and I guess most eligible for this upcoming draft that I'm going to do. So the most likely candidates for it. First of all, this is the stack of players that I'm not even going to consider. Most likely won't consider at all. Jack Norris played 7 games that season as a goaltender. That was a big part of the criteria for excluding players, was if they hadn't played a whole lot of games in the season itself. So just move that pile of cards away. And of course, these are the protected players. I did a video last night where I put the stickers on the cards for those. So they will go in their own separate pile. And what that leaves us with, I guess I can arrange them by team here, the dozen. Let me see if I can make 12 neat little piles here on camera before I get going with this. So let's see, no particular order, at least not yet. Detroit doesn't have too many eligible leftover players, actually, and I think that's probably why. No disrespect meant to Bart Crashley, but that's why they ended up protecting him. Again, if this were real, they might see promise in a prospect like that. So I don't know if I can do this 3x4 or not. Let's see. I might have to zoom out in order to do so. Okay, but that's Philadelphia. This I think I can. So let's see. I have Minnesota, Philadelphia, Oakland, Toronto. Let's go to the 06 ones. I guess we'll put them up top. Detroit. Boston is right here. Let's alphabetize them as well. Chicago, Detroit. And let's see here. Montreal is 4th. That's Toronto. And where? Oh, New York. Okay. All right. So just before I get going here, and I guess I could do similar for the expansion 6, couldn't I? So that'd be, I haven't alphabetized that one. That'd be Los Angeles 1st. Minnesota 2nd. Oakland 3rd. And Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and St. Louis. Okay. So Boston, Eddie Johnston. He let's see. I have ages and information written over here for them. So I have 18 goaltenders actually, and with goaltenders it'll be about 2/3. With the skaters, the forwards, and the defense, probably about a 50% chance that they will be drafted. Which actually for some players it's 99.9, basically 100% chance that they will be drafted. Meaning that for some other players, even if it's, I've made a list that's basically about twice the size of the number of players that I need to stock these teams. So some players, it's very unlikely that they will be drafted. But I look at it like, for instance, with Team Canada, when they have, a Canada Cup tournament and they invite like 50 guys, or just in a standard NHL camp, you invite 50 or 60 guys to the camp, that there will be a few dozen cuts before you really get going with it. But why not have them there in the camp? So to speak. Some of these guys as well during the season play itself, even if they are not drafted, if a team is struggling or if a team is injury hampered, there are some undrafted players who could find their way into different teams' lineups for this project. So again, Eddie Johnston is one of 18 goaltenders. Johnston at the time, a little older than Jerry Cheevers. He was 32. I don't actually have Cheevers' age written down, but Johnston was 32. Derek Sanderson, he's going to be hotly sought after going into this. He was 21 years old at the time. I know there's definitely an argument that I should have chosen him for one of the top 7 and not 27-year-old Ed Westfall. And in fact, it is rumored actually that Boston management might be trying to lobby at the last minute to get this switched over at the deadline, but we will see. Another thing that I wanted to mention too, I plan to do 2 videos like this, and sorry if this is tedious and I'm tiring anyone out, on this before I even get the project going, but hey, this is my thing, so take it or leave it. So Derek Sanderson, again, it's rumored, let's say, that Montreal, because their one remaining center is the aging John Beliveau, and then also Detroit with only Delvecchio so far, that should they come up early in the spinning wheel, unless Boston can spin a deal to, because it's also rumored, let's just say, yes, this is where I go with it, my geeky mind, that Boston might try to swap picks with some of the other original 6 teams and say, like, hey, if you come up first, we'll trade picks with you, and then in 2 of the later rounds, we'll give you, if we come up first in the wheel, we will give you 2 of our earlier round picks, because I am going to do a random 1 to 6 spin for each and every round. So I still have a little bit to do before I get to the draft. Another thing that I want to do, and I've already done this a few dozens of times actually, But on a different device, I want to try the same spinning wheel again just to make sure that it is random enough and fair enough to all 6 of the teams. Anyway, so there's Derek Sanderson. Tommy Williams, it surprised me that Tommy Williams was only 27 years of age in 1968. He had an 18-goal and 50-point season, a little short in there, 68 games. It was a 74-game season then, so Williams missed a half dozen games. But passing bonus, pretty good. Didn't take a whole lot of shots that season. Decent shooting percentage, though. Eddie Shack, I mean, everything that you get with Eddie the Entertainer. Plus, he had a 23-goal season there, so he had numbers to go with the entertainment value. So Eddie Shack will be a good eligible candidate. Gary Doke, probably a little more fringe. Doke, let's see here. Doke was, because I have over here, it's very, very sloppy. This is just for me. Again, 18 goalies, 39 centers, but probably a third of these centers are dual positional. And left wing, right wing as well, just a bunch of rough, loose notes, ages, and things like that next to them. So I have 29 right wing and 33 left wing. But again, some of them are the generic wing position, or they can play either side, which I guess the generic W would allow them. Just a straight W. And for defense, I was going to go LDRD, but a lot of them just have the D on their card. So where it's indicated on the card itself, I put LDRD there. I think I have all the ages penned in as well. So, so anyway, I did all that to say that Gary Doke at the time, 21, might not be ready yet. A lot of guys that I looked at too, and I thought, like, again, if I play this forward, even into 69 and 70, which I've already committed to doing, and if I can say this for myself and about myself, I think that one thing that I've really prided myself on when doing this channel is that if I say I'm going to do something and start and finish it, then I commit to it. And so far I've done that. I've completed multiple projects already in the short history of this channel. And I'm not going to guarantee necessarily that I'll always do every single one, but if I have a reason for not doing one, then I'll even come on and make a video about that. And actually I did that when I hit the pause button for a little while on the 24-25 replay, because I just realized 3 was a crowd. I had I had a Hockey Bones project ongoing, which was a social project, so I didn't want to put 5 other people on pause. And then I had the Mike Owens What If project as well, which I had started before the 24-25 replay, but I digress like I do best. So Doke, only 21 at the time. Don Orey, honestly, Orey could actually go pretty early. Some teams in need of defensemen. Orey, he's not an offensive defenseman, but defensively a pretty good candidate there, and he can intimidate. So Fred Stanfield. So what I said for Derek Sanderson does apply to Stanfield. I mean, he's a little older, but let's see, Stanfield at the time would have been 23. So a little older, my goodness. So Fred Stanfield, a very eligible candidate. So some of the aforementioned Boston, Montreal, and Detroit will really be gunning for Stanfield. Dallas Smith, what I said about Don Orey applies to him. Ted Green it's a combination of sort of Mr. Right and Mr. Right now and then Mr. Right down the road sort of thing. So Ted Green was just Mr. Right now for Boston to retain for their team. So Dallas Smith, though, very eligible draft candidate nonetheless, as is John McKenzie. Honestly, Boston, a lot of really good talent here that the Boston Bruins are having to leave and possibly lose to the spinning wheel. And again, I've already indicated this. I will try to reacquire 1 or 2 guys. I want the mix. I want the fun. I don't want to protect any more than 7, even if it seems like unofficially I'm doing that. But again, if this were real, I think if the teams were given this sort of parameter, this sort of rule that they could only protect 7, they would probably say to some guys as they were going out the door that, hey, we will try to get you back in the draft if we can, if at all possible. And again, I might even allow some maneuvering among the GMs, among that 6-way division up in my head. So Chicago is next. For Chicago, Dave Dryden. Maybe, again, I basically have 12 more. What I'm going to do is have 3 goaltenders, 6 defensemen, and 12 forwards for each team. And so a roster of 21, and they'll dress 17 in each game. That's how I completed my last project, and I just like the way that it worked. So that means, again, 6 goaltenders have been protected, so only 12 more of 18. So I guess Dryden has like a 66% chance, but again, no disrespect meant. I think there are a number of better, more eligible candidates than Dryden. So if he goes, it won't be early. Pitt Martin, a bit of a down year, and I have to pretend not to know that, though I think he was sort of supposed to counteract Phil Esposito in that Boston-Chicago deal, though obviously he and most others, very few ever got to Esposito prime level in their careers. Martin, nonetheless, had some pretty outstanding seasons, some pretty respectable numbers that he put up for Chicago into the 70s, which I have to pretend not to know about. But indications, what little I've read and gleaned here and there is that Martin was still considered a pretty promising prospect at the time in his own right. Pitt Martin, who was just 24 at the time. So, there you go. Eric Nesterenko, good defensive. I've handled Nesterenko with a couple of other card sets and projects, so I'm aware that he is just a good defensive forward. He's only listed as a right wing here. I think he actually doubled as a center right wing, again, because I've had his card in other games. But, maybe he only slotted in at the right wing spot in this season. So Nesterenko at the time was a veteran, though. He was 34. Then you have Dennis Hull, Bobby Hull's younger brother. I'm going to say off the top of my head about 23. I think he was about 6 years Bobby's junior. Doug Mowens, honestly, even though Doug Mowens was, at this point, he was into his 30s. He, of course, played defense forward for Boston in the 64 Paradise Project. So Doug Mowens is 34 in this. And I knew he was 34, but I just wanted to double check anyway, just because I guess it was only about 99% confident or certain there. And Doug Jarrett is, let's see, Doug Jarrett. I have not seen Doug Jarrett. So, yes, I see him, 23. So, again, even though age will have to factor into it because there are a number of defense that off the top would have better numbers than him and be shot blockers and also be able to intimidate. But that is Chicago. I'll try to speed this up a little bit more here, which will be easier with Detroit because really beyond the protected 7, you have Roy Edwards, who at the time, let's see, Edwards was 30, I want to say 31, 30. He was 30 at the time, so glad I double-checked there. So he was 30, handful of years older than Roger Crozier, whom the Red Wings did protect. Kent Douglas, though, he went to Detroit from Oakland, so they tried to get better, I guess, and get out of the basement late in the season, I think, and so they got Kent Douglas. And, again, I've handled him with Toronto. He, of course, was a Calder Trophy winner in 64, I think. And some Calder Trophy winners were kind of older then. I mean, Douglas here, Douglas would have been... Let's see, Detroit. Oh, I put him toward the end, though. 31 at the time, so like 26, 27. Ed Van Impe as well with Chicago. I believe he won it. Bruce Mcgregor there. Mcgregor, again, I've handled him with some other sets and what have you. So center, right wing, I'm not seeing him here. Oh, yes, no, right wing. So 26 there for McGregor. Prentice was 35. I know I've looked at his card a little more closely because 17 goals, 55 points, pass bonus of +1. Gary Jarrett was in his 20s at the time, 25, so 10 years. Prentice is junior. Terry Harper with Montreal. Harper at the time, still pretty young himself. Montreal, again, they, like Boston, they are leaving a lot of the table. I guess Harper was 28. It seems weird to me because he did play into the late 70s. Bobby Rousseau is only 27 at this time. So, I mean, if not for a 23-year-old Yvon Cornway, Bobby Rousseau, again, he's just sort of choked out by the fact that Montreal could only protect 7. The pass bonus of +2. Bobby Rousseau is going early, whether it's to Montreal or whoever. I mean, again, he's 27. You'd have to assume, again, not looking ahead, that he's kind of right in the prime of his career. J.C. Trombley also surprised me, his age as well, because I think of him as a little, younger, wetter behind the ears, and about 68. Surprised me to read that he was 29, actually, by this point. Montreal, they would draft and sort of, you would develop slow. Like Guy Lafleur, when his card comes up in this, he's not going to be the hot prospect, at least in terms of what's on his card, that it would appear. And he will have to be good enough to at least break into the top 126, or I would assume that the evolution in carrying forward, that what you would do with a prospect like him. And again, because this is still in development, maybe what I will do is, not that I'm going to play farm team games or anything like that, but maybe I will make an allowance of a few names beyond 21 so that these players sort of have prospects in waiting. We'll wait. Remains to be seen. Again, I'm taking my time with this. Gump Worsley, I want to say he was 38 then. He had a 198 goals against average, sort of a late in his career year, playing behind Montreal's defense. Certainly didn't hurt for the belly flopper there, as my belly makes a little noise there, that Gump Worsley was. Yeah, Worsley was 38 at the time. Dick Duff, I was actually surprised to read with Duff because, again, I've handled him with 64, with 60. Duff was still, 31. I was going to say still in his 20s then, so I'm glad I double checked. For some reason, overnight, he receded in age from 31 to the late 20s, but no, back to 31 he goes. John Ferguson, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Ferguson is 29. Again, when you look at so many all at once, I guess, and you're me, you start to confuse them a little bit. Backstrom, surprisingly, only 30. Again, he'd already had a long, pretty heralded career at this point, several Stanley Cups to his name. Backstrom, again, who I've handled him with 60 and 64. Gilles Trombley as well, I also want to say 29. If he's not 29, it's give or take one. No, he is 29. Gilles Trombley, 23 goals, 51 points that season, and defense rating there of 3. And speaking of defense rating, Claude Provo, though he is 34 at the time, one of the better defense forwards like James, what am I trying to say? Wow, why am I blanking on all of a sudden? Like a Selk Trophy form, basically, there for Provo late in his career and throughout it at other points as well. He has the shadow rating. He's a good penalty killer. The defense rating of 4. So silently, perhaps conspicuously absent from other videos where I've talked about this has been Henri Richard. 9 goals, 28 points. Yeah, he missed a little time. He played 54 games. I know he's a legend. I know that players were promoted and demoted at the time for political reasons as well as professional. I know he's a legend. I know it could even potentially start a second riot in Montreal if Richard were to be demoted, not protected, blah, 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 whatever. But at the end of the day, I'll go back to I want competitive, dynamic, and interesting teams. And I think there are a couple of guys, too, if I'm going to politicize this a little bit. George Armstrong for Toronto comes to mind as well, in case I forget to mention him down the line, though I'll bring it up again. There are some guys that I think, again, if this were real, the team might have told them, like, going out the door, like, hey, we're going to pick you up again in, let's see, the draft will be 14 rounds. So once the rounds get into the double digits, Henri Richard, and I think as well, the chances of a team getting somebody who already played for the team, who played for them currently in 68 or previously, is if they are the best player available. If they're the best player available, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, just for instance, let's say like Bob Nevin is the best player available right now and the Rangers need another wing, but Bob Nevin played for them last season, so I'm not going to do that. If Nevin is kind of a logical BPA and that's the logical position that, say, just hypothetically, for instance, that the Rangers are looking for at that point in that round or whatever, they're going to take Nevin. So these teams, again, they're going to be anywhere from 33 to 50% as they were originally. I think that will still permit enough interesting change and new infusion, new blood on the rosters. Terry Harper, I mentioned. So speaking of Bob Nevin, I guess that's why he came to mind, because I saw him out of the corner of my eye there. Bob Nevin for New York. Camille Henry, I don't know. Maybe as a specialist, it could take a few injuries actually to get him into this thing, like other players getting hurt. Henry could be a power play specialist with his numbers, but one other thing about Bones is that if you're new to the game and you look and you see some really sexy scoring ranges for the players, you have to look at their shots on goal, because it might mean that they don't, it could be factored in here that they might have a high percentage but a very low shot output, and then looking at their matrix itself, it could be a lot less likely that they get shots on goal. So it's something to be aware of. Wayne Hillman, very defensive defenseman again. So I have, what am I going to need for defenseman? Defenseman, it's a little dicier. Let's say on average 4 or 5 per roster right now. I'm looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 per roster. So multiplied by 6, I'd be looking at 30. And I actually didn't write down the number of defensemen. I'm going to say there are about 40 that I have over here. Maybe a few more than that. Anyway, I think I'm a little off my numbers there. But so Hillman, who knows? Because of that, he may get in, though it won't be early, I would speculate. Don Marshall, maybe not playing his best hockey, but defensively, he can forecheck, decent range here, 30 assists, 146 shots, 19 goals. Orlin Kurtenbach, because I will need some role players. These teams will need some role players. Kurtenbach has a history with Boston. He has a history in other hockey leagues. What else can I say about him? So he can screen, he can kill, he can intimidate. First fight, actually, I had back into the hobby. I think this is one of the first games I played. Might have been the first one. a fight between Henri Richard and Orland Kurtenbach broke out. So little things like that you remember, right? Your own history on your own tabletop. Reggie Fleming. Fleming took a whole pile of penalties the first time I used him as a Chicago Blackhawk. He kind of built this reputation in my head for just this mischievous character on the ice. I want to stop short and shy of saying a bit of a lunatic, because I know he's also a talented hockey player, so I don't want to do that to him. I don't know him personally, but I'm sure he was quite ornery in some games, and he's got the double into the pause button intimidation. He can intimidate to the point where he can really set a game on pause, put a game on pause. Phil Goyette, 25 goals, 65 points, plus 2 passing bonus. Not, can't really forecheck or anything like that, but Goyette, simply for the numbers. If, again, a team, though Goyette was 34 at the time, a team that's looking for center depth and offense down the middle will look to Goyette. I can't see, even with his age, I don't want to look ahead too closely, too carefully. I've said this already. I can't see Goyette going past the first handful of rounds, let's say, to keep it all very loose. Arnie Brown, good defensive defenseman there. Probably going to be taken sooner or later. Floyd Smith, 24 goals that season in 63 games there, so he can screen and decent ranges. Marcel Pronovo, 37 at the time. Again, should probably get in on the bubble, but it remains to be seen. Jim Pappen, he's not in the notebook. I actually added him at the last second. His exploits with the 67 Leafs, if you fudge the shift rating a little bit, in their one-off best-of-7 against the Chicago Blackhawks. I have a couple of videos of that up. Johnny Bauer's standing on his head in overtime. That's why he has an award named after him. Again, it's all based on the history of kind of, my own history a couple of years back into this has come together. Murray Oliver, again, handled him with Boston for the Paradise Project. The one project that I have not played to completion, and that's why I really feel like, again, I kind of learned my lesson there, not to jump into anything too big, too vast. And this one here, too, I think I can do it incrementally. Like, it's not... This one I will permit myself more breaks in between seasons and things, like after this gets going. So it's a little different. The apples to oranges, really, this project compared to some others. But still, other than the Paradise one, I am a completionist, as I've heard others say. Murray Oliver, Bob Pulford. Bob Pulford, again, you good, 20 goals and 50 points, 229 shots on goal. George Armstrong, what I said about Henri Richard for Montreal probably applies to Captain George there for Toronto. They'll look to reacquire him. And Mike Walton, though he's a big donut defensively, +1 passing bonus and had a 30-goal season, 238 shots on goal in 73 games. Bruce Gamble, how old is Bruce Gamble? Now it's time to look at the ages again. Actually, what was Walton as well? Walton was 23 at the time, so that's another thing you have to consider. And you have to ignore the WHA. Bruce Gamble was late 20s, I'm going to say. 29. He was 29. There's a rumor actually about who Toronto wants, and it coincides with their real-life history. Not that I would know about that. There's Larry Hillman. I just came to my senses and put him in. I figure that of the protected players, some of them it will be legends who will sell tickets, and you will allow them to retire with the respective team. So Hillman, now that he's not been protected by Toronto, honestly, like 50-50, he even gets drafted, remains to be seen. Wayne Rutledge, this guy surprised me a little bit. I didn't really know him as well. I'm not even 100% sure that I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He had a good season with Los Angeles, and really, if you look here, I've got a lot of eligible Los Angeles players. Not all of these guys will get drafted, probably only about a half to two-thirds. But still, just to show this will be different from the original 6, as you know it, there are going to be a number of kings in this league once I redraft it. Rutledge, I'm going to say 100% certain that he goes. He's 26. His numbers are quite good. Well, I don't know. Now that I look at it again, yeah. Again, that's going to be probably a table time decision whether I go with a 38-year-old Worsley or Rutledge. It might depend on the overall age of the roster that's up on the wheel and on the clock, to be honest. Speaking of age, Terry Sawchuck, I want to say 38, but I'm going to double check. Yep, he was 38 and 68. So numbers certainly not bad for a 38-year-old playing for a weaker expansion team that season was Sawchuck. And Sawchuck, who also helped Toronto to the Cup in 67. Eddie Joyal, the Jet, I'm going to go ahead and say he will be drafted. I'm not going to commit to roughly when, speculate when. Again, it will depend who's up on the wheel and what do they need. Joyal is a straight center, +1 pass bonus too. There are a few centers who are a better candidate than Joyal, who at the time was 27. But Labossiere, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So 13 goals, 40 points. He can screen, pass, and again, later rounds at least, because right now I have between 6 and 10 centers protected. Each team's going to have 4 at least. So I'm looking at another, what am I looking at there? Like another 18, 20 centers drafted. So anyway, Ted Irvin. I'm calling him Ted Irvin and not Irvine because his own son, Chris Jericho, announced him as Ted Irvin. If Jericho is going to call him Ted Irvin at an AEW show, then I certainly feel free to call him Ted Irvin as well. So anyway, there he is. He's likely to go somewhere. Brent Hughes, defenseman at the time. And LA, not only were they good, they were young. So Hughes, let me see if he was a good example of this, just 24. Cowboy Bill Flett, also I believe mid-20s at the time. Bill Flett was 24 as well, same age there, I guess, as Hughes. Dale Rolfe, I mean, just looking at his numbers alone, I know that he's very likely to go 27 as well. One might consider that his prime. Bob Wall, he's a forward defense dual positional, and with guys like that, where certain other numbers don't necessarily merit it, they're still good as a utility guy. 50-50. Bill White, I think, will go in pretty early. Bill White, who I believe was 28 at the time. Yeah, 28 and 68. Real Lemieux, again, defensively, he's pretty good, and he can forecheck, and his numbers, he's not really going to be he's unlikely to be a real needle mover on the scoreboard in a game, if that applies or makes any sense. But eligible, Lowell McDonald. He and Parker McDonald. Lowell at the time was pretty young, actually, surprisingly young. Because again, I remember him in '64. He and Parker both. Parker, who's a Nova Scotia born. Anyway, Doug Robinson, I don't have anything written down for him because as I was going through the pile, I just decided to include him. Here's the thing about Robinson. He only played 34 games. I originally had decided 40 minimum, and then I made, I want to say, 2 or 3 exceptions. I've since gone back and made 2 or 3 more. I'm going to go ahead and say unlikely to get taken, though. Here's another one of them, though. Howie Menard, just 35 games. So he and Robinson kind of added up to a full season there. Menard, though, +2 pass bonus, defensively sound. And I'll be honest, likely to go, though probably not early. Plus, he's a forward, so he can slot in at any position up front. So that's another asset for him as well. 2 and 2 there, +2 there for Brian Campbell. Again, a shortened season. LA had a lot of half-season guys. Dave Amadio. And Amadio, let's see, his age at the time would have been 28. But they have Bob Wall, who was 25. Rolfe. Who did I see for LA that I was like, damn, they're young? Irvin's 23. Flett is 24. Lemieux is 23. And McDonald, it surprised me to see that he was only 26. Because, again, I've handled him before, if I didn't say it already, with the 64 Paradise set. Cesar Maniago, he, again, probably since 2/3 of the goalies I've listed will go. Maniago's still at 29. Pretty good numbers here, good save percentage, likely to go sooner or later. Gary Bowman, probably not. But again, I don't know, like that whole camp thing or that Canada Cup camp thing. You have their NHL team camp thing. You do if you're me. You list more guys than you know you're going to need. That's better than the alternative of not having enough. JP Parise, likely to go, a prospect at this point, but he did slot into 44 games, whereas somebody like Gary Younger, only 28, so I kept that in mind as well. So Parise likely to go somewhere. Bob Mccord, how old was Mccord at this point? I want to say about 30, so Mccord, yes. No, 33 actually, 33, but still pretty good card at least for a defensive defenseman. Bill Plager there from Minnesota. The 0, which I do the house rule of 1-2-1 for that for a shot in range. Anyway, high major penalty rating there for Bill, so a fighty one, as the THG might say. Elmer Bosco there, veteran, but I think he was only 32 at the time, not quite as old as I might have thought actually when I took a peek at him there. Yep, Fosco was 32 there, Moose Fosco. Mike McMahon Jr. for some offensive infusion to your blue line there. 14 goals, 47 points, +1. Okay defensively, and 26 years old at the time. Bob Wojtowicz, more of a defensive defenseman there. 17 assists, though. And Wojtowicz, however, hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, 26 at the time. I know that Parker McDonald was older. I'm going to go ahead and say mid-30s. Hazard a guess here. Yeah, 34, yeah. And Pete, I don't like, is it Guagan? Pete Guagan, he is in his 30s as well at this point. They're from Minnesota. Where is he? Yes, he's 33. Okay, and Bill Goldsworthy, who's like 23 at the time, so in his best hockey was ahead of him, so Bill Goldsworthy as well. And with all due respect to Bill Masterton, I've looked at his card. I'm not going there. I'm glad that I think it's cool that I have his card. I'm just going to completely just avoid and skirt, playing him into the history, because truth be told, again, if I didn't know the history of Masterton, he actually has a pretty good card for this season, for this game. But I'm just going to, just stay away from that altogether. Hopefully that will be understood and respected. Charlie Hodge and Gary Smith. Hodge, who was in his 30s at this point. Hodge was, of course, it's going to be the last place I looked, 34, and then Suitcase Smith was just 23. Of these two, hard to say, actually. They both kind of have stuff going against them, but I will guess that one of these two will be drafted, so probably Hodge. Again, I'm not trying to commit to anything yet. Burt Marshall went over to Oakland there, pretty good defensive numbers, and at the time, Burt Marshall was 24, so pretty young. Ted Hampson, I believe, was 31 at this point. Hampson, 17 goals, 54 points, +2 passing bonus, and he can play defense, and he can forecheck, and he's a center left wing, so he's dual positional as well. That's just what I call it, dual positional. Yeah, he is 31. Wanted to double check there. Brennaman, I can't tell you much about because he was another last-second ad. Again, he played just 40 games right on the bubble, did Brennaman, possibly to get some more guys into the league, potentially who spent a little more time with the Oakland Seals. Oh, that's right, I'm holding the Oakland Seals right now. So Gary Eamon, there he is. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. 19 goals, 44 points, +1 can screen, defensive rating of 2. 50-50. He's kind of a bubble guy, probably going late if he goes at all. Ditto Odd Erickson, again, just wanted to have enough guys, wanted to show a few more Seals on camera. Larry Kahan, who's at least 34 or 35. Let me confirm. Yeah, he's 34. So I don't know. I mean, again, not other than his age, though, there's nothing like this is not a bad card. It's not a great card, but there are no real liabilities here. No great liabilities, no great ones. Charlie Burns, he's a center. He can kill, he can pass, pretty good defensively, only 9 goals, but remains to be seen. Again, this could be a case of, and I said this earlier about a couple guys like Camille Henry, maybe it takes an injury to get Charlie Burns some ice time in this league going forward. Bob Bond's going to be drafted. I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be with Toronto. I'm not going to commit to anything like that and say, actually, what was Bond's age? Because Toronto has like an 80-year-old blue line with only 2 guys. Their ages add up to 80. Only 2 guys so far. So Bond there for Oakland. He was 31 at the time, so Toronto might look younger, if anything, in the blue line again. Speculating loosely at most here. And then Bill Hickey there, 21 goals, 40 points, +1 pass bonus too. So anyway, a bit of a card show here. We're over a half hour into this, but we're getting to Philadelphia and a couple of really good goaltending prospects and also young. So again, I have to pretend that I don't know that Bernie Perron's going to have a bit more of a storied career than Doug Favell, but rumors have it. I've already shared this with one other person, so rumor has it that Toronto might be in the market for Bernie Perron because, of course, they did acquire him in real life eventually. That he was there for a spell, so they may look to... It wouldn't even be, you know what this would be actually? Pre-acquire. Not reacquire, but pre-acquire. Toronto there with 43-year-old Johnny Bower. Might look to a 22-year-old Bernie Perron. Doug Favell, right in the picture there as well, and actually with numbers that are slightly better than Bernie Perron's. So, again, I don't know. I mean, at the time, scouts, you'd look at players that season and go, well, his numbers are better, but I think he has the better future, so... This is a name that I added at the last minute, almost to prove a point, actually. So for those scoffing and what have you about Henri Richard, feeling like I've somehow disrespected him, as if I would do that as a lifetime Habs fan and fan of the Pocket Rocket. It goes without saying. So this is a card of somebody who's unlikely to be drafted that's at least as good as Henri Richard's this season, and Philadelphia, and Ed Hoekstra, I think I pronounce his name. I took him off the do not draft pile there at the last second, just to kind of prove a point actually. Lou Angotti. So yeah, Angotti's probably going to go early actually. +4 pass bonus, penalty kill, 3 defensively, chem forecheck. Only 12 goals, but 49 points there in the season there for Philadelphia. Oh, I should know him because he played for Montreal in the mid-60s. I should know how to say this name. We're just going to say Leon for the time being. Penalty kill 2, 21 goals that season. Again, probably not early, but probably eventually. Britt Selby, probably kind of on the bubble, but one thing going for Selby, again, assuming this were real, they'd look to his 22 years, ripe young age, 15-goal scorer that season. Pretty good range, even if he doesn't get a whole lot of shots there for Britt Selby. And not really a liability anywhere. Doesn't take penalties, surprisingly, for the Flyers. So Bill Sutherland, maybe somebody might want to use him for his power play numbers, give him some occasional PP2 time or something like that. But again, he'll go late if at all. Gary Donofer probably should go a little earlier. Again, the numbers are nothing to, I don't know, stop the presses about, I guess. He shouldn't compete for the scoring title or anything, should Donofer. But +2 pass bonus, can screen, decent defensively, can intimidate a bit, and forecheck. So enough said. Jean Gauthier, and I should know if it's Gauthier or probably Gauthier. He played for Montreal in the mid-60s as well. He's on the 64 Canadiens. And okay, but not great again. This year, looking at somebody who could be a late-round defenseman going. John Mizuk as well. He played for the Red Wings in 64. And here he is with Philadelphia in 68, looking pretty okay. Plus, he can shot block. Forbes Kennedy, just kind of a mucker. Kennedy can intimidate doubly. He did have 28 points that season, 130 penalty minutes. I just wanted Kennedy in there. I'm not going to say necessarily that he will be drafted. Joe Watson, again, for more pure defense, I guess. And Watson at this time was pretty young. I know I'm jumping back and forth here. I'm not saying every single bit of information about everybody. Watson was 24, because this video will be even longer than it has to be or it needs to be in that case. So I want to say Van Impe is 28. Van Impe, 27. If Chicago still had him one season later, he might have found his way onto the protected list. But he ended up with Philadelphia. He's got that pause button there, and he's a shot blocker. And back to Bernie Perrant. So Les Binkley, I'm going to say he and Hank Basson probably. I mean, again, there's only really going to be 6, though, in that pile of 18 that are not taken, and I already expressed doubt of multiple goaltenders, so maybe one of these 2 gets taken late by a team that just, to slot that third goalie in there. Probably a team that already has 2 good goaltenders, and they're just taking one of these 2 in, like, round 14 to just to fill out the roster, all the slots required. So, anyway. Al McNeil, pretty good at this point. I want to say he was about 30 right on, was Al McNeil. He was, he's 32 actually. So, Ken Schinkel, hopefully I said his name correctly. He can kill, he can pass. Decent card. Should be drafted eventually, I would guess. Played with the Rangers in the mid-60s. Bill Spear, I'm going to say he's bubble. He's unlikely, but I included him. Gene Ubriaco, help me if you know it and you hear it. Dual positional. So again, not great numbers, but again, the 2 positions and another Pittsburgh guy. Noel Price, who played for Montreal, even I think just one season prior to this. And again, could go eventually. Ab McDonald, probably maybe should find his way back into it. Keith Mccreary might not, but actually Mccreary I remember fondly from when I did a 68-69. What would I call it? A what-if season, because I broke up the divisions, and instead of West-East, I had North-South, and each division had 3 expansion and 3 original 6 teams in them. And Keith Mccreary was pretty outstanding, actually, for a chunk of that. So, like, scoring all kinds of goals, inexplicably, the dice kept coming up Mccreary. So, Earl Engerfield, did I talk about him yet? New York in the mid-60s, and here he is with Pittsburgh. Possibly late round to a team that's hurting for centers. But then Art Stratton also could go late to a team that's hurting for centers. Few assets there. Val Fontaine, defensively pretty good, even if only 6 goals in 69 games. And Paul Andre, I think I added at the last second because I figured, well, if I'm going to have Fontaine, why not have Paul Andre and Billy D? Bob Dillabow, because he, again, defensively, so a team that's looking for some more defense in their lineup. His numbers don't look great here, but he did just play 47 games, so give him about 25 or 30 points at least if he plays on, and then add to that the penalty killing and the defense. Again, he won't go early, but it's possible he will go. Leo Boyven is 35, and it's about the only thing going against Leo Boyven, I think. Not outstanding offensively, but no slouch there either. 9 goals, 22 points, and 68 when, there weren't Paul Coffey, Larry Murray, Phil Housley types, Brian Leach, and Al McGinnis skating around for every team. So, and Doug Wilson. So, Leo Boyven. Andy Bathgate, 34. I was actually surprised because if you see footage of him in 68, he let himself go gray. And he almost just, I guess, solely because of the color of his hair, looks a little older than he is. I was surprised when I looked at it. So yeah, Bathgate was 35 then, and I knew that, but I wanted to double check.